Hey everyone, it's me, Rami Marks, your Tangled Yogi out here in Northern California. Welcome to the Seekers of Sweetness series, week number 2. I'm so excited to bring you this class. So let's go ahead and talk about the things that we're going to need. I'm going to be working with the Micron PN pen, the Sakura Jelly Roll white pen, a graphite pencil, and you know me, I'm a Prismacolor girl, so grab your Prismacolor pencils. If you don't have Prismacolors, just grab whatever color pencils you have and play along. Now we will need to have the template for this piece, and if you look right below the screen here, you'll see a description of the class. If you click the More button or click on the word More, you'll see that there's a link in there for you to download the template and print it out. If you don't have a printer, don't worry about it. Go ahead and make a square that's 5.5 inches tall and 3.5 inches wide, and then go ahead and draw a hummingbird right on the inside of it, and you are good to go. So with that said, let's get started with the Seekers of Sweetness. So before we get started, I thought it would be nice to do a quick little centering here. So just taking a moment to have a comfortable seated position. Let your shoulders melt away from your ears. Allow your spine to grow comfortably tall but not hard. Let your hands rest in your lap and allow your eyes to close. Letting your attention come to your breath here. And on the inhalation, feel how your body expands with breath. And on your exhale, feel the release. And just staying with these breaths for the next few moments. And as we breathe here, I thought I'd share a quote with you. And this is from Constance Barrett. And she says, "The hummingbird teaches us to transcend time, to recognize that what has happened in the past and what might happen in the future is not nearly as important as what we are experiencing now. It teaches us to hover in the moment and to appreciate its sweetness." So taking a moment to let that settle in with you. Taking a nice deep breath in. Let it go with a sigh. And when you feel ready, wiggling in the fingertips and toes, gently blinking the eyes open, and getting ready to tangle. So we are going to dive right in here, and we're going to start with this really fun tangle called Jafari. And Jafari is one of those gorgeous flowers that I just absolutely love. So what it is you have a soft circle, and you can just grab your graphite pencil and a piece of paper and tangle right along with me so that you learn the tangle. So I've got this nice circle here, and what I'm going to do is I'm just going to divide the circle with my pencil. These are strings, so these are not part of the actual tangle itself. This is just a guide to do Jafari here. And so all Jafari is a series of waves, but it's almost like the tangle betweed where you're weaving it. So I'm going to start right here, and I'm just going to create a wave that's going to start right there. Now I'm going to come up a little bit, and I'm going to start to do another wave. And then this wave will come right back to the center. I'm going to turn my tile, weaving, and then back to the center there, or back to the end of the tile. Weaving, and drop back down. I'm going to turn my tile again, starting up a little higher, dropping back down. Up a little higher, dropping back down. You can see that I'm continuing to turn my page, and we're using this kind of pattern to make it all the way around, and then you're going to see me just close it off by weaving, so you can see that I'm not going back to the center again. Now once I've got that, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to go in between my petals here. So I'm going to come in, and I'm going to just come in and do an aura of that kind of wave-like pattern. And what this reminds me of is a beautiful flower that's about to open, like a camellia. This specific tangle was actually based on a succulent, but I really see something like a camellia that hasn't opened yet and is on its way to opening. So I'm just going around, adding this in, turning my tile as I go. So you can see now I've got this kind of beautiful flower-like shape in the center, right? So you can see that it's kind of like a bud in there. I'm going to come to the very center of this piece and I'm going to add some tipple, and I'm sure that many of you have seen the center of a flower that has kind of like a pollinator in the center. So I'm just going to add a cluster of those tipple. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to create these little seed-like shapes that are going to come back and down towards the center. And this is just, a nod to Mother Nature doing her thing, just like so. So that is the actual tangle of Jafari. Now, the outside, the way that we're going to do it is we're going to come off the outside edge here, and I'm just going to do a little bit of a wavy line, and I'm going to connect. Now the next one, I'm going to start from the corner. I'm going to come out and do a wavy line and connect. So I go into the corner, come out, and do a wavy line and connect. Go to that inside corner, wavy line, connect, inside, wavy line, connect. So you can see I'm going all the way around just like so. Super fun, super easy. So go ahead, play with that tangle, and then we're going to start to bring it into the piece. So I still have my graphite pencil in my hand here, and I'm going to start to build Jafari, but you're going to see me just create a circle, but part of that circle is going to kind of come off the edge here, and then I'll bring it in and around. So you can see that part of Jafari will be a little obscured by the border there. Okay, so you can see that I mostly have a circle, but I'm going to let this side come off just a little bit. Now I'm going to do just exactly as we started before. So all I'm doing is I'm going to go ahead and divide the space. And you can see I'm still working with that graphite pencil. And I'm just dividing the space. So let's zoom in on Jafari here. So remember how we just started? So we're going to work in the in-between. We're going to do a nice wave that's going to go in between, and then we're going to turn the tile, and we're going to come up a little bit, and then we're going to continue on with Jafari. Turning the tile, come up a little bit, and then drop down right to where the edge is. Come up a little bit, drop down to where the edge is. Come up a little bit, drop down to where the edge is. I'm going to turn here. I'm going to drop down. Now I have a little opportunity there. You can probably just come right in because you're using your graphite pencil, so it's no big deal. And then once again. So there is the outside edge of Jafari. Let's go inside. So I'm going to come in, go along the string, and just make my waves. Go along the string, make my wave. Turning, turning, turning. Such a fun tangle, and I think it's really kind of hypnotic, turning your tile like that. And so I've got it all the way around. You can see this really has that nice flowery feel. I'm going to come into the center, and I'm going to build this up a little bit. Put that pollinator in there, and you can make it look a little bit more wild if you want to, like You can see what I'm doing is I'm trying not to make it symmetrical. And then all I'm going to do is build those little seed like shapes along the string. So you can see that I'm using that string to guide those little flower-like petals into the center. And just building it up. So that you get that really cool feeling in the center. Isn't that neat? Let's come to the outside edge here. So I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to start from this corner, coming up and out, make those little wavy lines and connect. Turning the tile, come to this corner, make a little wavy line and connect. Inside corner, wavy line, connect. Inside corner, wavy line, connect. Turning my tile. Here I'm just kind of playing it through, doing the best that I can using the border. I love to play the edge. Here I won't be able to do anything, but over here I can make it look nice and wavy. Now, some of you may have seen me do spiral rows. It's one of my favorite, or spin rows. It's one of my favorite tangles. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to add some petals that are going to go around this piece. And those petals are really super easy to do. So I'm just going to drop down from this corner and make it look like there's a petal that's starting there. I'm going to jump out and I'm going to make a nice wave, and then I'm going to dive in again. Jumping out, make a nice wave, dive in again. Jump out and dive in. Jump out, dive in. So this is where we're kind of having taking a little liberty with this particular tangle, which I think is really fun. If you want to make another petal set coming out, I'm just going to make mine feel a little bit bigger. And I'm just going to let it dive in. This is going to go behind my little hummingbird and dive in. Coming in. And that'll be it for that. Super fun. Hope you really like this tangle. So I'm going to start to go ahead and ink in my tangle here. Now I'm not going to draw the string lines, but I am going to ink in everything that I just drew. So you go ahead and ink in yours as well, and then when we come back, we're going to start another tangle. So our next tangle is called Fine Gull, and I'm going to just make a really kind of soft arc here, and then I'm going to drop down. Now once I've got that stem in there, I'm going to just at the very top put a little bit of a leaf-like shape here, just to keep it interesting. And then I'm going to go ahead and create these little arcs or little stem-like shapes that are going to come out from underneath. And you're going to just see me placing them underneath there. Now once I have that, I'm also going to add some dots at the end of each of these stems. I'm going to come to the inside here, and I'm going to make a long line on the inside and a shorter line right here. And I'm going to just make a little leaf-like shape that's going to go like so. So it's a longer line, and then a shorter line, and then you just create this little leaf-like shape. Longer line, shorter line, little leaf-like shape. I'm going to go over to the other side, longer line on top, shorter line on the bottom, little leaf-like shape. And then once I've got that the way that I want it, I'm going to go inside and just give it a little bit of a detail. Such a sweet tangle. I think it's such a pretty one. So let's go ahead and bring this into our piece here. I've got my graphite pencil here, and I'm going to use this as my string or something to help me create the string. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to very gently create this little soft line that's going to intersect and come out the other side of the hummingbird here. And then I'm going to go ahead and start to build the stem. And then I'll go ahead and I'll add a little bit of that really nice leaf line. So once again, the whole idea is that you're creating these first lines with the dots on them. Let this one go above his head here. This one's going to go behind the wing. And then once again, I'll just come out the other side. And once I have that, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to start in with those other lines to create the leaves. So you're going to go with that longer line first, and then the shorter line at the bottom, and then all you're going to do is just create that little petal-like shape. Longer line at the top, shorter at the bottom, petal-like shape. Coming over to the other side, longer on top, shorter on the bottom. You get into the groove of it, the zen of it. I really do love just the rhythm of this tangle. It really has a nice feel to it. And you can see that I was kind of dancing around the hummingbird here. And I'm just going to let this kind of float underneath. Now I'm going to do another one right on the other side. So all I'm going to do is I'm just going to bring in another stem that's going to come out, and it'll probably just come to the right at the top of the hummingbird head. And then I'll go ahead and create that little stem here. It's kind of like a pointed stem. He kind of looks like a little unicorn hummingbird. And then I'm going to go ahead and create that leaf-like shape. And then I'll start in with those little stem-like shapes coming off the sides. And I just love the flow of this. It just has a really nice soft feeling to it. Now, I really don't have a spot where I'm thinking about this landing, so I'm just going to let it kind of float through and come to the other side of the hummingbird here. And if you want, you can, throw a stem off here and here, and you might even be able to get one there. So once again, the whole idea is just building up that leaf, coming to the other side. You can see that I'm just kind of flowing now. I know where my lines want to be, so you can, play with it and make it your own. There is no one way to do this. Once you've got it, you know where you're going with it. And so that is fine go. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to ink mine in. You go ahead and ink in yours. So for this next part, we're going to pick up our IdentiPens and we're going to use that to fill in the hummingbird. We're going to be doing a silhouetted hummingbird today in class, and you can see that I'm just going over my lines of where the hummingbird is, and I'm really being careful inside of his beak, and I'll just follow these little wavy lines down. And I really love the IdentiPen for doing pooling of ink. Now, you could be using the graphic from Sakura, you could be using the brush pen from Faber-Castell, whatever your favorite pooling pen is, that's just fine for today's class. So once I've got my outside done, I can go in and start to pool my ink. Just a couple of notes here when you're pooling ink like this. Notice how my pen is working in a circular motion. That way I don't get any scratch in the background. and it fills it in a really nice way. Now, you could even do this with your Micron PN pen. It'll just take a little bit longer. And if you don't have any of the pens that we talked about, grab a Sharpie. Sharpies are great. You just want to be a little bit careful with the Sharpies because they do have a tendency to bleed. So you would want to work from the inside out instead of the outside in. Okay? So just things to think about when you're bringing in all of this really nice black into your piece. So go ahead, ink in your bird, and then when we come back, we're going to do some really neat detailing in the bird. So for this next part, I'm going to be using a Jelly Roll 08. I want a little bit of a fine point on this, so a 10 might be a little tricky, but you can do it with a 10, but I'm going to be working with an 8. And so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to come to the belly of my hummingbird here, and I'm going to start by creating a little soft arc inside of the belly of my bird here. Just like so. Once I've got that little soft arc in the belly, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to do another arc right behind it. Now once I've got that, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to do some little seed-like shapes, just like so. And I'm going to try to keep them as evenly spaced as I possibly can. Once I've got those, I'm going to go ahead right behind them and I'm going to do some white dots in between. And then once I've got that, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to bring some crescent moons behind the dots. So it's just a little soft arch right behind the dots. And then finally, I'm going to bring a line with a little dot at the very end of it in between those crescent moons. Once I've got that the way that I want it, I'm going to come up to the wing and I'm going to give the illusion of feathers just by doing these nice long seed-like shapes. And as I get further back on the wing, these shapes will start to get a little bit smaller. Just like so. And if you'd like, you can bring in some more dots into the back end of the wing. And then finally, I'm going to come down to where the tail is, and I'm just going to go ahead and start to bring this line right to this arch right here. I'll go back to the center, come back to the next arch, and then one more right here. Once I've got that the way that I want it, I'm going to turn the piece. And I'm going to bring in this almost petal-like shape that's going to come in and drop down. In and drop down. And last one right there. And then once I have that, I'm going to aura the shapes that I have here. So all I'm going to do is just create these interesting aura-like shapes that are going to happen in here. And an aura is just what you think it is. It's just a line that is echoing the shape that's around it. Now if you want to, you can add a little bit of a dot into each of those shapes. Now once I've got that, I'm going to pick up my gold pen, and I happen to have the Sakura Jelly Roll Gold. And I'm just going to come into this space right here and bring a little gold into the belly of our hummingbird here. And you're also going to see me bring a little bit of gold into the inside of each of these petals. And then I'll come to the wing here and bring a little gold into the wing. Just like so. And then finally, the last place I'm going to bring a little gold is right down here in the tail, just to keep it interesting. So now that you've seen what I've done, you can go ahead and do yours, and then when we come back, we're going to start in with color. So if we were in the same room as each other, I would be passing out chocolates, but we're not, so here we are. Go grab your chocolate. All right, so I'm going to start to bring in some color here, and I'm going to start with Mulberry from Prismacolor. This is PC 995, and you can see that this kind of has a magenta type feel to it. It's a really beautiful color. If you don't have Mulberry, you can always use the Dahlia Purple in lieu of it, but I'm really going to play with Mulberry today. And the way that I'm going to start with this is that I'm going to go very, very lightly and start to dust in Mulberry. And you can see that my pencil is really well sharpened up, and I'm just using the side of the pencil to fill in the space here. So I'm just going to go through and fill in the whole flower with Mulberry very, very lightly. You can see that I'm even going right over my lines. I'm letting my inner 4-year-old out to play and just going right over the top of it. So go ahead, fill yours in ever so lightly. Work on the side of your pencil, little circles to get that soft mist of color. I know you've heard me say it 1,000 times, and I'll probably say it 1,000 times more. So go ahead, have fun with this, and then when we come back, we're going to add a little shading to the mix. So I'm going to break this up into pieces for you, and then I'm going to set you loose on it, okay? So you can see that I've got these little points all the way around Jafari here. I'm still working with my Mulberry, and I'm going to just come in and start to create a shadow very, very softly, about medium pressure now, so that I get this beautiful shadow that's going to start to come around all of these points. Now once I've got that little shadow in there, I'm going to pick up a little bit of violet. And so violet is going to be one of those darker colors that gives us a little bit of depth. And it will come in, and we'll just dust a little bit of that violet all along the edge here. And then I'll blur out a little bit of that violet with some of that Mulberry. So I'm just teasing the color around and just getting this really nice electric kind of shadow going on here. Isn't that so pretty? So I'm going to go all the way around to all of my points and start to create that shadow. And just for a note, violet is PC 932, okay? So you can see that I've had a chance to go all the way around. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick up my white pencil, and I'm going to just very softly start to blur the edges of where that heavier Mulberry is meeting the lighter Mulberry. And you can see that that really brings this kind of softness to it. So if I go to the next one and do the same, you can see I'm using little circular motions just to blur out my edges a little bit and soften up those petals. So you go ahead and do yours. I'm going to go around and do mine, and then when we come back, we're going to start to work in the center of the piece. So once I have that the way I want it, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to bring in a little bit of Mulberry, a little bit heavier right in the center, and I'm going to go about halfway up that petal. And then I'm going to come back in with a little bit of that violet and add a little bit of drama into the center. And then finally, I'll pick up a little bit of white and blur my edges a little bit. So you go ahead and do yours, and I'm going to finish up mine. Let's start to work with the petals that we have here. Let's go ahead and zoom in on this. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to come to the back end of this petal, and I'm going to go around and add a little bit of that darker mulberry on the edge and dust that in. And then I'll bring in a little bit of that violet and dust that in. I'll pick up a little bit of my white pencil and blur out my edges, just like so. So I'm going to do all of these around the inside edge, just like that, okay? I'm going to leave the outside ones alone for a moment, and I'm just going to focus on these. Isn't that so fun? I'm just loving the way that this tangle looks. So I'm going to continue on with mulberry, but I'm also going to pick up another color, and this is the yellow ochre. We used this in our first class for the hummingbird series. This is PC 942. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to start to come to these petals on the outside edge, and I'm just going to dust the edge of these petals here with the mulberry color. And then as I move away from the edge, I'm going to lighten up my touch a little bit. I'm going to pick up my white pencil, and let's zoom in on this here, and I'm going to blur out a little bit of mulberry. Now once I have that, I'm going to go ahead and come in with a little bit of that yellow ochre, and I'm just going to add a dusting of that yellow ochre in here. And you can see that I'm leaving a little bit of lightness right along the edge there. This is really going to electrify the piece. This is based on a flower that used to be in my garden when I lived in the Bay Area. It was called Chicago Peace, and it used to get this gorgeous little blush on the edge and then a little bit of yellow beneath it. So go ahead and do yours. I'm going to do all of mine on the outside edge just like that. It glows, doesn't it? So pretty. So I'm going to take a little bit of that yellow that I have from the outside, and I'm just going to randomly put it in certain places on the tips as we move in towards the center. I just want to unify this piece just a little bit, and I'm not going to do too much of that yellow on the inside, but just enough to keep it interesting. So you can see that I'm just kind of playing that up in little spots just to make it play up how the outside is working with the inside. And then you can come in with your white pencil and you can blur out a little bit of your edges just to make it look like it's a watercolor, or it just has that random softness to it. We're going to carry this yellow and we're going to start to bring it up through here. So I'm just going to go ahead and start to dust in our Tangle Fine Go in here, and I'm dusting each and every little leaf that I have in here, and I'm filling it in. And I'm going to do the same thing with the other one on the opposite side. So you go ahead and do yours. I'm going to do mine. I'm going to pick up a new color here. This is Terracotta PC 944, and really what I'm looking for is a warm brown here. And let's go ahead and zoom in on our Fine Go here. And all I'm going to do is I'm going to dust the very bottom of Fine Go with that terracotta, and then I'll give a little bit of a push right on the edge here. I'm going to pick up a little bit of that yellow that we were working with earlier, blur out my edges, and just give this kind of a blush. So it's almost like this is just a very soft yellow, and with a little bit of that warmth at the bottom, it really gives it a pop. And so I'm going to go all the way through this and do that, and I'll even do this at the bottom of my leaf at the top. Okay? So you go ahead and do yours. I'm going to do mine. So we're going to start to work with the background here, and I have in my hand lime peel green, which is PC1005, and I'm pretty well sharpened up here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to start to bring that lime peel green into the background, and it's just going to be a base color for me in the background. We're going to end up doing a really beautiful ombre in the background here, but you can see that I'm starting out just with the lime peel green. So I'm going to just go ahead and put this all around where we just did our fine go here, and I'm just going to work my way all the way around in the background and add in that lime peel green. So you go ahead and do yours. I'm going to do mine, and then when we come back, we're going to do some shading in the background. So have some fun with this. Remember, relax your shoulders, soften your jaw, and just enjoy what you're doing. Have fun. So I've picked up a darker green here. This is olive green, which is PC911. I like this green because it has a real earthiness to it, but if you need to substitute it, you can always use the grass green in lieu of the olive green. I'm going to start by turning my piece, and I'm going to go very, very lightly with the olive green, and I'm going to start to build up an ombre of color here. And so I'm just kind of bobbing and weaving through here and going in little circular motions. Now you're probably wondering, well, why did I lay a lighter foundation down before putting down the darker green? And the reason for that is that it makes the color more blendable. There's something about the texture of some of these darker colors that they don't play as well, and so I have found that if I layer my colors, I can get much more play out of them. So I'm going to just let this come up almost to where the top of the beak is in here, and you can see that it's just this really nice soft dusting of that color. And then I'll go behind over here and do the same thing. So you go ahead and do yours, and I'm going to finish up mine. Now that I have that first layer down, I'm going to begin to add a little bit of pressure to this. And you can see that I'm going along the flower and a little bit along the tangle that we have on the side here. I'm just going to start to bring that up, bringing a little bit more pressure into this. So I'm looking for a richer color, and you can see that I'm going back and forth with that pencil, soft circular motion here. And then I'll dip into the areas where I want to have a little bit more of that darker color. And what I'm trying to do is develop this kind of ombre of color. So I'll come around the back side of where I have my hummingbird here and start to bring that up. Turning this to the side a little bit, get a little bit of drama in there. Now once I've got that ombre the way that I think I want it, I'm going to pick back up a little bit of that lime peel green again, and I'm going to start to blur out my lines. So you can see that I'm just going right over where that darker green was meeting the lighter green, and just kind of softening up that color, and then I'll start to move forward. Now I am lightening up my touch just a little bit because I don't want this to turn lime green. So I'm just making sure that I get this nice soft blend of color. And then as I move up, I'm going to start to soften up that color a little bit more once it meets the lime peel green up top. Okay? So you get the idea of what I'm going for here. I'm just going to continue to work around the piece and get those colors nice and soft. And then when we come back, we're going to add some wallpaper into the piece that's really going to make it pop in the background. All right, have some fun with this, and I'll see you in a minute. So we're going to work with the Tangle Moon Pie for this background in the piece here. You can see that I've got my pencil really well sharpened up here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a series of arcs, and then we're going to put a design pattern into it. So Moon Pie is this really fun pattern where you come in and you do an arc. Remember, we're doing this with the same color that we've been coloring with here. You can see I'm getting a little debris on my piece. And then I'm going to do a nice arc right behind it. Now I'm going to do a little bit thicker of an arc. And then I'm going to do a narrow arc behind that. So once I have this, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to come into this space right in here, and I'm going to do a series of petals that are going to come into this form of moon pie. Just like so. And then when I come into it, I'm going to also add a little bit of pooling of my color in between those petals just to really get them to pop. So I'm going to build off of this now by just coming over here and doing another one. So I'm going to do an arc, and then another narrow arc, and then I'll do a thicker arc, and then a narrow arc again. Once I've got that, I'm going to put my petals in, just like so. And then I'll pool the color in between the petals. So you can see how I'm going to start to build off this, not unlike the Tangle Shattuck. So I'm going to bring in another set of arcs right here, but you're going to see me have to do a little holly bow around the tangles that we have here and around our bird that we have. And then I'll just come in and start to build around that. So you get the idea here. With Moon Pie, such a fun tangle. So I'm going to go ahead and continue to build that up. You go ahead and do yours, and then when we come back, we're going to do a little bit of shading inside of the head of Moon Pie. Isn't that so pretty? I love that in the background. I hope you do too. I still have my darker green in my hand here, and I'm just going to do some shadowing on one side of the inside of the head of our moon pies here. And I'm going to just make them very soft and very subtle. And so when I'm in the darker colors, I'm going to be using the darker colors, but as I move up the piece, you're going to see me switch into lime peel green. And so when I get up into these areas, I'll use the lime peel green, but just press a little bit harder and just add a little bit of that shadow on one side and give this a little bit of interest into the head of it. So, be thoughtful about where you're doing your shading and what color you're doing with it, but you recognize that we're working with the background color that we were originally doing. But look at how pretty that is with a little bit of shading on the inside, and then how it gets real pale at the top. So go ahead and do yours. I'm going to do mine, and then when we come back, we're going to add some white highlights to this piece. So I hope you're enjoying this one as much as I am. Let's just go right back down here to our piece that we had in the beginning. I've picked up my black pen here, and what I'm going to do is I'm just going to ink in half of those little circles that we have, just to make them appear like they are the Tangle Bronx cheer. Now, if you kind of have a little opportunity, remember you can always come back in with a white pen. But you can see that all I'm doing is just giving this a little bit of a shading on one side with the white pen, and that gives this the appearance that it has a little bit of sheen or white in it. So you go ahead and do yours. I'm going to finish up mine, and then when we come back, we'll add some more white. I've got my white pen in my hand here, and I'm going to start to work with these outer petals that we have, and I'm just going to give a little bit of sheen into those petals by doing just kind of a wavy line and a dot. And I am going to be fairly random about it. I don't want these to look like every single one has been done. I want it to feel a little bit more organic in nature. So I might come in out here and add one and give it a little line, maybe go over here and add one and give it a little line. And you can see that I'm in the darkest part of the color on that, and look at how that brings in a little bit of interest into it. So I'll let that kind of flow into these outer pieces as well and just start to bring in that sheen. I'm also going to go into Moon Pie here and just add a little bit of white into some of these pieces just to give them a little bit of pop. You can see I'm just putting in a little bit of lightness, and then I might come in and create a little bit of sheen down the side here just to give these a little bit of interest. You can see how that starts to give that a little bit of pop. So if you want to come into Moon Pie and add a little bit of highlight into them with a dot and maybe a little bit of a line, you can go ahead and do that too. Now, one of the tricks that I have learned is that after your white has had a chance to set up, you can come back in over the top of them and just dust right over the top, not pressing hard, but just enough to give them a little bit of the pigmentation of what was underneath. I always find that when I'm doing wallpaper, if I do too harsh of a highlight, it can be a little bit of a detractant. So, like I said before, you have to wait for it to set up, otherwise it'll just buffer right off. But you can see how just adding a little bit of color over the top of that makes it a little bit softer. So I just love the way this one came out. I hope that you do too. I'm going to go ahead and hide my chop here. I've got this nice petal right here that I'm going to go ahead and just hide my chop in. My chop is my initial, and that's just my way of showing that I've finished the piece here. And I'm just going to take a minute to admire the piece and enjoy and just give gratitude for the opportunity to create today and take some time for self-care. So I hope you enjoyed week 2 of the Seekers of Sweetness series. Go ahead and give the video a thumbs up or a nice review if you enjoyed the class. Even better, hit the subscribe button. That helps more people to find us doing Zentangle in color. If you enjoyed the class and want to share your work, go over to Facebook and go to the Tangled Yogi Art Community page and share your work there. All you have to do is answer the security questions and you're in, and you have a beautiful community to share your artwork with. We always love to see what you create, and I love when you guys put a different spin on it and share it. So that's it for me. I'm Rami Marks, your Tangled Yogi. I'll see you next week for the 3rd installment of The Seekers of Sweetness.